The original version of The Hobbit that Tolkien published in 1937 contained a surprisingly affable Gollum, who was not yet so completely subjugated or enthralled by the ring. The next year, in 1938, when Tolkien started writing The Lord of the Rings, he soon realized the significance of the ring, and therefore he revised especially the chapter of Riddles in the Dark in The Hobbit, making Gollum far more enamored of the ring and far less inclined to give it to Bilbo. Today on Speculative Tolkienism, we are going to explore these revisions and the ramifications of the changes he made, and the changes he could have made, and some changes that he would have never made, but are fun to consider. And now for the quest. What about the present? Asked Bilbo. Not that he cared very much. Still, he felt that he had won it pretty fairly, and in a very difficult circumstance, too.
We must give it the thing, Precious. Yes, we must. We must fetch it, Precious, and we must give it the present we promised.
So Gollum paddled back to his boat, and Bilbo thought he heard the last of him. But he had not. The hobbit was just thinking of going back up the passage, having had quite enough of Gollum and the dark water edge, when he heard him wailing and squeaking away in the gloom. So, anyway. I guess Gollum had every intention of giving this ring to Bilbo. Or, you know what? That version of Gollum that plays by the rules does still manifest. It's like he still creeps out in the Smeagol Gollum kind of dichotomy, because Smeagol likes to be a good hobbit and plays by the rules, and then Gollum, his like alter ego, chastises him for like playing by the rules and is more of a slave to the ring.
Yeah.
So this kind of fair-minded Gollum, which was Gollum in the 1930s,
right,
was divided into this fair-minded Gollum and a more evil, or at least more deceitful, or more corrupted Gollum. So I find that really interesting.
I mean, I wonder if Tolkien had like some kind of backstory for Gollum, just even like a brief sketch before The Lord of the Rings. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like, oh, here's this creature.
Yeah.
Because they never really go into, like, they go into detail about what he looked like, or he goes into detail about what, his 6 teeth and.
There was a backstory to Middle Earth that was very deep and old in terms of the timeline of Middle Earth, but also in Tolkien's biography. So the original stories of like Beren and Luthien were from like the 19-teens, like during World War One, and then he wrote The Hobbit later. But that specifically, that story of like Gollum's backstory, I don't think that was around until after The Hobbit. Because in The Hobbit, it was like he was just introduced as like, deep down there lived old Gollum, and he was just some kind of slimy guy that lived in the cave.
Yeah, I mean, he just was hungry, and
Yeah, he doesn't have. But so Tolkien needed to give him like a history that made sense in the context of the larger work.
Well, I think he also Tolkien needed to kind of give an example of the ramifications of what was in store for Frodo had he claimed the ring.
Right. That was. In fact, that was almost a happy accident.
Yeah.
Because we see how, you see here, like how almost, I'd like to say inhuman Gollum looks, but in if there's a word, in Hobbit, he looks like a degraded form of a hobbit, which is what he is. And so now that we know that he's a hobbit, then you're right. It was like that shows, oh, this is what Frodo or Bilbo could be if they let the ring take complete control of them.
Or they could have been like, I think what again, it may be happy accidents or whatever, but what maybe saved Bilbo was the innocent, like, again, with this, in my mind, what I have always felt, and look, and the thing is, like, we know that the necromancer was now actively in power in Mirkwood, right? But my young mind was like, okay, well, this happened so far ahead of so far before, like, previous to the Lord of the Rings, right? That Sauron wasn't around. He was still kind of shaping himself. So the ring didn't have the same kind of power over people as as it could have, like, later on.
Because you're right, it didn't have the sudden grasp on Bilbo's psyche, as like you can see that here it has this grasp on Gollum, but only through repeated use. He's like a drug addict that's been a junkie for 1,000 years or hundreds of years or decades. Or whatever.
But okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, but so when Bilbo first puts the ring on, it makes him invisible, and that's one level of potency for the ring, but it doesn't really wield any control over him because it hasn't sunk its fangs into him yet. You know what I mean? Which seems like takes time through repeated use or something.
Right. But again, it seems like, though, like the way it was described in Lord of the Rings, when Smeagol took the ring from Deagle, it was like instantaneous. It's like, I gotta have that. You know what I'm talking about? It was. He
coveted it even before he was wearing it.
Yeah.
He coveted it at first sight. It was love at first sight.
It's like I equate it to the drug addict. Like, that has that one hit of crack. The first hit, it's like, crack's delicious. I need some more crack.
I need more crack.
Right. All this talk kind of brings me to something I always call it blasphemous, but I always thought was a little bit not unconvincing, but just slightly troublesome, because there is this carryover between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And years pass between the two. But now the Lord of the Rings has to be a story about these rings that were introduced in The Hobbit, or this ring was introduced in The Hobbit. Right. And that's fine, but the fact that the ring makes its wearer invisible seems strange in the larger context. So Tolkien had to make this larger context, like, this is one ring, the one ring to rule them all. Why? The idea that the ring would make you invisible in the context of just The Hobbit, it makes sense for that kind of smaller story. Yeah. And it seems like almost a trivial, like, oh, it makes you invisible. Isn't that? It's like a magic trick that you'd see, like a magic trick, a guy with a top hat and a tail.
Yeah, but a useful magic trick.
I'm going to pull a rabbit out of my hat. I'm going to do tricks for you. It's like a trick.
Yeah.
And so it seems almost trivial as a trick. And as a plot device, it seems like a Deus Ex Machina. Like there's a way in which it always is going to solve the problems that Bilbo finds himself in, and therefore is somehow seems like a little bit like cheating.
Yeah. I mean,
so
I can see that.
I mean, these are the kinds of ideas, like, oh, you have a magic sword or a magic hat or a magic this or a magic that gets you out of your problems and saves the day in the end. And in that sense, it seems almost like a children's story. So Tolkien had to get out of that and make it a little bit more significant and more problematic in Lord of the Rings.
But you know what, though, coincidentally enough, though, Tolkien did seize on this. The fact that Bilbo lied about, and again, he didn't have to go and rework this, but Bilbo did not tell anybody about the ring, and it, basically he took credit for the,
escape
disappearing
from,
act.
Yeah.
And again, it was weird, but
it was weird, but luckily for Bilbo, hobbits are well known for being quiet and able to sneak around.
But what I'm saying, but for Tolkien, what he was able to do is look, this normally honest hobbit lied about having this ring. You can see where again, it could be because Bilbo was. When did
Gandalf find out that Bilbo lied about the ring?
I think he knew about it. He knew that he lied about the ring.
Do you think he felt instinctively that Bilbo lied about? Like,
Gandalf had a ring of his own, and he had it, I think, during The Hobbit, didn't he? I mean, like,
is it mentioned though? I mean, he has a ring as an Astari.
It wasn't mentioned. I mean, but
doesn't he have one of the three Elvish?
Yeah, he had one of the three.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And he got it way early on from the shipwright.
Círdan.
Yeah. Yeah, but Gandalf probably would have seen the ring because the rings recognize rings, you know?
Oh. Yeah, because it says like that Bilbo didn't mention the ring. He doesn't explicitly mention the ring to Gandalf because he was enjoying praise for his accomplishments.
Right, but Gandalf knew.
Let me give you one answer on Korra.
Okay.
It says, I would venture to say that Gandalf suspects that Bilbo has acquired a ring. Hold on. He is no fool. Bilbo has accomplished by the end of The Hobbit some rather impressive feats, and it would have been highly unlikely that he would have been able to perform them unaided. Fighting a horde of spiders, evading a live dragon, to say nothing of discovering perhaps the only unseen way out of the Elven King's nearly impenetrable fortress. These are all deeds that would, and probably did, cause Gandalf to raise an eyebrow. A very big, bushy, gray eyebrow.
Right.
That's me talking. Also, as pointed out elsewhere, Bilbo reveals his ring to the dwarves, who surprise him by not being ashamed of him, as he had thought they might, but indeed are rather impressed. His esteem merely increases in their eyes at obtaining such an obviously rare and incredible useful artifact. So I suspect, along with Gandalf's suspicions, that after being pressed a bit, he does tell Gandalf, considering the following exchange. Gandalf looked again very hard at Bilbo, and there was a gleam in his eyes. I think, Bilbo, he said quietly, I should leave it behind. Don't you want to? Well, yes and no. Now it comes to it, I don't particularly like parting with it at all, I must say, and I don't really see why I should. Wait, this is from Lord of the Rings.
That was from the Fellowship.
Yeah.
No, he knew, like, in The Hobbit, he knew that because the dwarves knew, because, he's like, I'm going to disappear, blah, 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 because he's getting him out of, the Barrels Out of Bond. Like, if you read Barrels Out of Bond, that chapter...
Okay.
I think he revealed that he had the ring to the dwarves.
Right. But and this almost gets me to my point. Like, let's say this could just be any old magic ring,
right?
As you see in this picture right here, it could just be any old magic ring. And you don't. And of course, it's mentioned that for a long time, Gandalf has suspicions that it's the One Ring, but he doesn't know for sure that it's the One Ring. Right. And he has to actually go off and do research to figure out the provenance of the ring.
Well, he didn't know it was One Ring until he actually threw it in the fire and saw the runes.
Right. Right. But it could have been a copy.
Well, it could have been one of the many, one of the lesser, like the essay in the craft or whatever. So I mean,
yeah, could have been a Chinese knockoff.
Right.
No, but my point is this, that so he finds a ring that makes him invisible, and it turns out being the One Ring, but it seems like that invisibility aspect of it is super emphasized, and it becomes like the only aspect of the ring that's worth mentioning in The Hobbit. And then in The Lord of the Rings, you can't have it be so overemphasized as a ring that makes you invisible, because that would get Frodo out of all these scrapes, whereas it's more problematized in Lord of the Rings, as it should be, because now it's almost sometimes he wants to put it on because he's afraid, but then it reveals him to the ring wraiths in the spirit world or whatever.
Right.
So it's like less of a solution. In The Hobbit, it's this great solution.
Right.
In The Lord of the Rings, it can't be such a great solution, because it kind of would cheapen The Lord of the Rings if it was just a solution to every problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Frodo asked about the power of the ring, and that invisibility question came up.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, and the answer was, well, have you tried to do this? Have you tried to do other things? do other things. I mean, and it was hinted at after Boromir tried to take the ring from him. He put it on and disappeared, and he could see like in the distance an eye. You know, he can sense the major players and
right. It gives him, when he puts it on in the Lord of the Rings, it gives him access to like the spirit world in a way.
Yeah,
and therefore
right.
he can see things that are aphysical. Or so. I mean, I'm thinking like if Frodo or Bilbo knew how to really put that ring through its paces and like unlock all its potential as a ring of power, he could have.
Right,
like,
but it gave the bearer power according to their stature. So I still think that if Frodo were to unlock the whole potential of the ring, right? Say like whatever, Sauron being a Mire would have still killed him. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, he could. I mean, Aragorn, on the other hand, because of who he was, if Aragorn would have wielded the One Ring, he probably had the strength to bury Sauron.
So like you're saying, a hobbit who was in full control over the ring and unlocked all its power, he'd be a big fish in a small pond. Like he'd be the badass of the Shire.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't be able to match, Sauron, even a ringless Sauron.
Right. That's what I mean. Again, I don't know for sure because it's never been put to the test. But I don't think that he would have been able to, because I mean even Sauron with the ring got brought down. I mean, it was a lucky blow. I mean, granted, and they had
right, and that at least in the movie, and one assumes, according to the accounts of the Second Age, that when Isildur attacks Sauron, like Sauron isn't invisible. He's wearing his ring, but he's not invisible.
Right.
So maybe like invisibility isn't even a necessary attribute.
And and this is just like my prepubescent brain, but like thinking about this, but I've always felt that the ring turned you invisible to reveal itself. You know what I'm talking about? Like that was kind of like, like how else would you know it was a magic ring? I mean so,
right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like in a not so subtle way, it's suggesting to you that it has power, and maybe in Tolkien that I know of, he never said this, but this actually would be a pretty cool explanation, is maybe the invisibility is what gets you hooked on it, in the sense that how useful is that for a lot of people? Like a lot of people would love to be invisible.
Yeah.
Invisibility isn't it's not the end, it's the means. It's like the means to the end. The end is to get you hooked on the ring. The end is to get you enticed by using the ring as much as possible until it's able to sink its teeth in you. But the means to that end is it makes you invisible. And hey, who doesn't want to be invisible from time to time? How useful is that?
And you know what though? I mean, when you really think about it though too, it's like Gollum, where he ended up, didn't need to use the ring. I mean, basically, it was just there. He was looking at it, but he didn't need to wear the ring because he got good at sneaking and maybe every once in a while if he wanted orc meat or whatever or goblin meat. But, for the most part,
there was no reason to use it down there.
That's like why he didn't become a wraith. That's why he didn't fade, and that was like part of it too. I mean, you got to remember. I mean, if you use the ring enough. Right, that's why they chose the hobbits, because they were the least susceptible to
they're a hardy people.
Right. I mean, because now like Gollum didn't use it as much as he probably could have, and he didn't. He got stretched, but he didn't become a wraith. And then once he become the wraith, and again something to speculate, but the whole idea was that you become a wraith and then you go and find Sauron and you give him the ring, because now you're under the sway of getting the ring back to its rightful owner.
Right. So the will of the ring. Well, that's the thing. It's the ring is often described as having a will of its own.
Yeah.
But that's actually only just a stand-in for Sauron's will.
Right.
It's his will by proxy. So it wants to find its master. But sometimes the will, it abandons its master, or it seems to have or had once.
Right.
I mean, when Isildur cut the ring off of Sauron's finger, you could say it abandoned its master, but maybe the ring couldn't, it was taken.
Yeah, I mean,
so.
Yeah, I mean, but then the ring slipped off.
It abandoned Isildur maybe to get back to Sauron. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that was the whole idea. It was basically it kept going from owner to owner, and that's why Gollum was the whole suggestion that a kind of destiny thing that Bilbo was meant to find the ring because it was trying to get back to Sauron, and Gollum was never leaving his cave, So here comes Bilbo, that was going to take it and get it get it out in the open air. And I mean, there's no coincidence. Again, it was mentioned in the book that the year that the ring was found was the year that Sauron started rebuilding Mordor. He left Dol Guldur and went to
Dol Guldur. You're saying that when the ring was found by Bilbo is the year that
because that's where Gandalf went.
Here's the big question before we wrap it up. I think Tolkien had to put significance in that ring because it was found by Bilbo. But what if he had never written The Hobbit? And what if he wasn't? So he was forced to write about there being a ring of power because of The Hobbit. If he never wrote The Hobbit, he could have made a sword of power or some other implement of power. It didn't have to be a ring.
Okay, let me ask you this: without The Hobbit, would he even have written Lord of the Rings? I mean, let's just say that The Hobbit was written.
No, he wouldn't have, because it wasn't it his publisher who was like, "When are you going to deliver on The Hobbit Part 2?"
Yeah, we need a Hobbit Part 2, baby. Get it out. No, but what I'm saying though is that is an interesting question. Like why the ring and not like a Glamdring, say? I mean,
what if Glamdring was the one sword to rule them all?
Yeah. I mean, in a weird way, it does kind of make sense that Sauron would make a weapon rather than a ring. Again, I mean, the ring might have just been a device because it's non-violent, or it just I would be curious to see what the thought process was behind.
I mean, of course, a Tolkien scholar, and probably whoever hears this will probably be pulling their hair out from the blasphemy. But and of course there are reasons why Tolkien was interested in rings. People were like, well, isn't there's the Ring by Wagner, and when people said, "Oh, were you influenced by Wagner's Ring to write the Lord of the Rings?" and he would say, "No, both rings are round, and that's where the similarity ends." But the idea of finding a magic ring, or having this ring of power, is clearly some kind of influence of Wagner's Ring trilogy, the opera. Or is it a trilogy, or are there 4 of them? I don't want to say that, but anyway, his Ring cycle, they call it.
Right.
But also, Tolkien was also a scholar of Anglo-Saxon literature and Old English language, and there's the practice among the Anglo-Saxons and the Germanic tribes of giving rings. A king will distribute rings to his supporters. Kind
of like a sign of fealty or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like in Beowulf or whatever. You give the rings to the Speardanes or the or whoever's gonna back you in war. And if they do a good job and they fight on your behalf and they win, you're supposed to reward them with gold rings.
Oh,
So
okay.
I mean, so there was like a thing of distributing rings to your supporters, to your underlings, as like almost a hierarchy. So in that sense, that makes sense too. But yeah, but it doesn't have to be rings. I mean, why not have 3 swords for the Elven Kings on
Kings
their
under the sky.
under the sky? Yeah. It could have been Grand.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
Could it?
No, but I mean-
did Grand.
Grand.
Grand being like the thing that everyone's after. We need to get Grand. We need to destroy Grand. Throw Grand.
How are we going to sneak Grand into Mordor?
That would be so sad if you had to sneak Grand. Get
Can you imagine
Frodo like. Can you imagine Frodo like desperately trying to lug Grand through the desert?
Yeah, he's looking up at Sirathon going like, oh my God, I got to take it up how many flights of stairs?
He gets to the top, he drops it. He goes clang, clang, clang.
Oh shit.
He drops Grand. And then he
Sam!
finally gets
Sam,
through
can you
the
go get
desert.
Grand?
you wanna carry Grand for me?
Get Grand for me for a little bit.
Yeah. Think of how different like Lord of the Rings would be. Sam's like, can I bear Grand, Mr. Frodo? Oh sure, please, God. Please
Yeah,
take
just take Grand.
Take him. I can't stand it.
It's like, how are we gonna hide it? Put a blanket over it. Put your elvish clothes.
But yeah, I mean, you take Grand down into the Morgul Vale and cross the cross the desert, and then you have to climb the freaking mountain.
It's like you come up with Sorks. Oh, you lot! What is that? Nothing.
Nothing. What's that? What you got under the top?
Well, I know. Gollum's hide a Grand down in a.
It's like
How would you get that out?
They do riddles in the dark for Grand.
I know, for Grand. Like, what is this? Look, it's a big old battery rip. Excuse me, I'm joking. Like, oh, I mean, but I guess it would depend on what Grand you're talking about. But either one would be like, it would be really tough to smuggle.
Oh right,
You know
well
what I'm
there's the
saying?
Grand from the Fall of Gondolin or whatever.
Yeah. Dude. What if it was Grand that Bilbo found and not the ring?